Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of the Rosalind Franklin Society 2022 end-of-year virtual meeting called Awards, the Window, or Just Window Dressing. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Julianna LeMieux, science writer at GEN, and I'll be your host. We have a group of women joining us today who clearly have a lot in common, not the least of which is that they are all amazing scientists. But they also all happen to be award winners this year. So we've asked them to join us to dive into a conversation about awards, and more specifically, awards for women in science. And we'll ask the question, why don't women get awards as much as men, and why is that important? So we're joined today by Huda Zoghbi, a professor of pediatrics at Baylor College of Medicine, an HHMI investigator, and founding director of the Jan and Dan Duncan Neurological Research Institute at Texas Children's Hospital. Huda's expertise ranges from neurodevelopment to neurodegeneration, work that this year earned her the Kavli Prize. But she's no stranger to prizes and awards, having been awarded many others in the past, including the Breakthrough Prize. We're thrilled to have you joining us today, Huda.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be with you and this wonderful panel.
We're also joined today by Maria Antoinetta Tosches, who this year became a Rita Allen Scholar. Maria is at Columbia University, where she has been an assistant professor since 2019. Another neuroscientist, her lab studies the cerebral cortex and the diversity of cell types and neural circuitry in the brain. Hailing from Italy, she earned her PhD at the EMBL in Germany. Thank you for being here today, Maria.
Thank you, Juliana. Thank you for having me here on this panel. This is really a true honor.
And Leslie Mitchell is a co-founder of Neochromosome, a synthetic biology company enabling biological engineering at genome scale. Prior to Neo, Leslie was a postdoc at NYU, where she worked on chromosome and genome engineering in both yeast and mammalian systems. She helped lead the International Synthetic Yeast Genome Project, which aimed to build a designer yeast genome from scratch. Leslie completed her PhD in systems biology at the University of Ottawa in Canada. And this year, she won the Rosalind Franklin Medal, given jointly by the Genome Writers Guild and the Rosalind Franklin Society. Thank you for joining us today, Leslie.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I want to start with the science. I'm going to ask each of you to please start off with just a description of the work that you're doing in your labs or your company. Huda, let's start with you.
Sure. So my career started as a physician. And when I saw people with neurological problem, I decided to pursue science to solve the problem. And I'm now 100% convinced that only through science can we really make a big difference in the life of our patients. So my research is focused on using genetic tools to understand the mechanism of neurological diseases and then find ways how we can intervene to really improve the symptoms of these diseases. So starting with patients, we identify the genes causing these diseases, then we go on to create animal models for them, and then we pursue potential interventions. So I'll give you a couple of examples that are going on right now. One of the diseases we study is Rett syndrome. It's a disease caused by loss of function of a gene called MYP2. We have animal models for that. And we're trying to really understand two different aspects of that disease. One aspect, how can we molecularly make up for the loss of this protein in the brain cells? And what can we do to change the course and improve the symptoms of the disease? And the other one is totally neurobiological. Instead of going after molecules, let's understand the different circuits and the changes that happen in the circuit of a patient with Rett syndrome using the animal model and find nodes that we can modulate in those circuits and make the function better. And we have examples, along both lines of research. So it's really from molecular to systems neuroscience, if you will. Sometimes we found ways to intervene using, technologies such as antisense oligos. So one thing I'm really excited about is for the opposite side of disease. So Rett is loss of MYP2, doubling MACP2 can cause another progressive neurologic disease that we have an animal model for, and we found if we use ASO to normalize the protein, we can reverse the symptoms in the adult mice. And that work is right now in preparation for clinical studies for the future. So it moved from our lab to the clinic to prepare for the clinical translational studies. That's on one end of the spectrum. The other end is adult neurodegenerative diseases. And that's what I shared the prize with Harry Orr for. Collaboratively, we discovered the gene, and we've been trying to understand from the single Mendelian inherited adult neurodegenerative disease, what can we learn? And we learned a lot in that we have a model that replicates the features of the disease, and we've learned the mechanism, how the expansion drives the disease. But we now have an opportunity to understand something that's really important for all adult neurodegenerative diseases. In these diseases, typically the protein that may drive the disease is expressed all over the brain, but only one brain region is affected, or two brain regions are affected. Why is that? The mutant protein is everywhere. Why do you get only selective vulnerability? We're in the thick of that research.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much. So Maria, let's stay with some neuroscience research. And can we hear a little bit about what's going on in the Tosches lab?
Of course. So I am also fascinated by the brain. It's a universe of cellular diversity, complex circuitry, and complex functions. And I think, like Huda, I shared this interest in understanding how the brain works at a fundamental level. Our approach is I would say, is not mainstream because we're trying to contribute to neuroscience from an evolutionary angle. I think that the diversity of brains, of animal brains, and of the functions that these brains perform is a richness that we can exploit to deduce general principles underlying brain organization and brain function. And so this motivates me and my lab to study unconventional species that are not commonly found in neuroscience laboratories nowadays, to just explore the brains of these animals and their uniqueness, and then compare what we find in these brains to brains that have been studied in much more thorough detail, like the mouse brain, for example. And this journey really started for me as a PhD student, where I worked on annelid worms, worms that live in the ocean, but then I felt, compelled to study a system that was a bit closer phylogenetically to humans, to us. And so, as a postdoc, I started working on reptiles, and we explored the cerebral cortex of turtles and lizards. And now, in the lab year, the last 3 years, we started again a new adventure, which is studying the salamander brain. And the reason why we're studying salamanders is because not only they occupy a very interesting phylogenetic position, they're amphibians. So they have this biphasic life cycle with an aquatic phase and a terrestrial phase. But they're also genetically tractable. So unlike reptiles, for example, we can make transgenic salamanders, and we can exploit the new tools that, for example, CRISPR-Cas genome editing, that enable now scientists to manipulate gene function in order to understand what single genes or what certain neuron types are doing in the brain. So our entry point in all of this is to understand the complexity of brains and to compare brains across species by focusing on the building blocks, which are the cell types. And we've been fortunate to be in an era where cell type studies and cell type profiling has been facilitated greatly by single cell genomics. So we are taking this single cell approach and sequencing brains from these non-conventional, non-canonical species and comparing these transcriptomes in order to reconstruct or at least infer something about the evolution of neuron types. So one interesting finding, for example, we had was the unexpected discovery that a certain class of neurons in our cerebral cortex, which are the GABAergic interneurons, which are very specialized, very important for regulating the activity of cortical circuits, we found that these neurons are deeply conserved in evolution, that they probably existed already more than 350 million years ago when our ancestors or animal invertebrate ancestors left the aquatic environment and transitioned to a terrestrial lifestyle. So now we're taking these findings to the next level, and partly facilitated also by the Ritalen Foundation Award, trying to understand how is that neuronal diversity evolving by comparing developmental processes that set up these neuron types in salamander species and comparing them to what is known from mammals. And a second line of research in the lab is going towards understanding what these deeply conserved neurons are doing in the brains of salamanders that otherwise have also substantial differences from, of course, mammalian brains and our own brains. So in a way, we are using neuronal diversity as an entry point to understand what's in common and what's different between the brains of animals that have adapted to life on Earth in different circumstances.
Okay, thank you so much. So interesting. Leslie, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on at NEO?
Well, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. And I think the easiest starting point is to give a little bit of background to myself. I'm a geneticist by training. And I would say at the end of my PhD, I was a frustrated geneticist at all the caveats associated with certainly this idea of breaking genes, adding back genes, and sort of the forward and reverse genetic screens one can do to try and understand biological systems. And I sort of hit on this idea of synthetic biology and moved into that field in my postdoc when I joined Jeff Buca's lab, the idea of building from scratch as your approach genetically to understand how cells work. Sort of saying, can we take the amazing amount of information we have about biological systems and ask, can we build them by design and have them work out of the gates as we would hope? Short answer to that is that's a tough challenge, but in my postdoc, that's exactly what we did, and not doing that at sort of the single gene level, but rather the whole genome scale level. So a really ambitious project to write a whole genome, a eukaryotic genome from scratch. Short story to that technology has made a huge number of advancements. Thinking about tools that underpin genetic approaches, we've heard a little bit from Maria and Huda, single cell genomics, CRISPR screens, et cetera. The idea of writing long pieces of complex DNA and putting those DNAs into cells, that's the technology that we sort of developed through my postdoc and led to the genesis of Neochromosome, the company I co-founded with Jeff Buca and Joel Bader, to ask the question, is there a place in biotech for a platform that allows whole genome writing from scratch? If so, what would we do with it? We have a technology. It seems to have a lot of promise. Let's launch a company and ask the question, does anyone want to be our customer? In short, it was a big hypothesis-driven kind of approach to company formation. And so we quickly discovered that there was certainly a market need to think beyond the level of a single base change or a single gene change and start thinking about building systems, pathways, chromosomes, and whole genomes from scratch. And so that is what Neochromosome is. It's a platform technology company that enables the design, build, delivery, and functional testing of very long pieces of DNA in cells. We are focused on a certain number of cell types that includes various yeast species and mammalian cell types, but certainly open to discussions to go beyond those sort of areas of expertise that we have internally, and starting to think about building an ecosystem of almost adopting a new mindset associated with engineering cells at scale and what one can do with that commercially to generate new and interesting products. We're doing that in a couple of different ways at Neochromosome right now by taking some of our very differentiated capabilities and offering them out through sort of a services program. Access to long and complex DNA is a bit challenging on the market right now. And so we have pointed that capability outwards, and we're in sort of discovery calls day in and day out with companies across the biotech spectrum to ask them if given access to new and more complex primary pieces of DNA, to go into their systems, what new experiments would that enable? And that turns out to be a very interesting area to spend time in. And moreover, taking those capabilities and building up valuable platforms internally. And so thinking about, can we build a yeast-based system that can manufacture new to nature proteins that go beyond the canonical 20 amino acids and start incorporating non-canonical amino acids, which really is just the ability to put new chemistries into proteins. And what would those proteins do? And so again, many discovery calls related to how do we take that technology and make the most of it? So those are the two big programs at Neo right now. We've grown to a team of about 50 people. We are now a wholly owned subsidiary of a larger life sciences company in New York City called OpenTron's LabWorks, traditionally known for making low-cost liquid handling robots. And as a cell engineering business unit, you can imagine there's a lot of synergy there. We automate almost all of our processes. And so provide sort of end user insight for the robotics business unit. And moreover, they provide sort of automation and robotics capabilities to us. So that's where we're at. And it's been a very exciting ride. And I think there's a long way to go for this technology.
Okay, terrific. I mean, that was all so interesting. Obviously, we could spend the rest of the panel just talking about all of the science that the three of you are doing, just amazing. But as I mentioned, you also are all award winners, which is something I want to spend a little bit of time talking about as well. So actually, Leslie, let's stick with you for a second. Can you tell me a little bit about the award that you won and, you know, what it means to you personally?
Indeed, I'd be happy to do that. It's been absolutely an honor to be recognized by the Rosalind Franklin Society together with the Genome Writers Guild with the Rosalind Franklin Medal this year, recognizing, I guess, the work, the contributions to the field of genome writing as a result of the work in the synthetic yeast genome project and now commercialized as a function of Neochromosome. What it means to win an award. Julianne, in your intro, you sort of mentioned that Maria, and I'm sure this is also true of Huda, are no stranger to winning awards. I would say I'm in the opposite bucket. I would say I am a stranger to winning awards. This would be one of the few I've ever won. And it's so incredibly meaningful to me personally to be recognized in the context of what is one of the most iconic female scientists, this namesake of this award, as well as what is really the burgeoning scientific community associated with the work I do, the Genome Writers Guild. It is an incredibly meaningful thing to me. And for that, I'm very thankful.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Leslie. And Maria, you're a Rita Allen Scholar. Can you talk a little bit about what that means to you and also, you know, how that even came to be? And then, you know, what it means to apply for it and then what it means to have been awarded it.
Absolutely. So it's been a great honor to be awarded the Rita Allen Scholar Fellowship. And I would like to emphasize that this is an award for a research project that we have proposed to the foundation. And so to me, this award means a lot, not just in terms of recognition of our work, but also in terms of recognition for the broader field and the kind of science that we are doing and that we are representing. So you're asking about how this award came to be, and I think this is an interesting story and a lesson that I'm learning for myself, and I hope will be useful to others. I'm a first-generation scientist. I grew up in rural Italy. My parents did not have higher education. They're farmers right now. They're harvesting olives to make olive oil, and I had no idea about how to get into a career in science. And for me, mentors have been everything. You know, they've helped me realize my potential and find opportunities. And this is, again, a story of my application for the Rita Allen Award is also, again, a story of the importance of mentorship, because this funding opportunity came about at the point where I had already applied for so many grants and foundations, and I was a little bit tired of the process. And when you start as an assistant professor, there are many funding opportunities from private foundations, but of course, you know, there's also a lot of competition. There are many excellent young scientists in the field, and the Rita Allen felt extremely ambitious because the foundation is giving only 5 awards. I mean, at least this year, I'm one of 5 awardees in fields of neuroscience, immunology, and cancer. And when I saw the email announcing, this opportunity, I decided, no, I don't want to spend more time on this. I just want to focus on doing the science, mentoring my students. No more grant writing at this point. I did not have much, expectations about myself. And then shortly after, one of my mentors, Professor Darcy Kelly, she emailed me saying, I think you should apply to this one. And we talked about it, and I said, okay, last one, I'll try this. And I received the award. So this is a lesson of just not passing on opportunities, trying to fight my own imposter syndrome, which is always around the corner. Receiving the Rita Allen Award has been a great honor, and I see this as a recognition for our work and for the work of my team and the work of my lab, made of people that in the middle of the pandemic decided to join this new adventure on working on something that is completely new and ambitious and challenging. So this has been a great motivator for them and recognition for them and for my team. And as I said, for the field, because we're working in a very basic neuroscience, on very basic neuroscience topics, as basic as it can get. And it's really an honor to see that a foundation like the Rita Allen Foundation that wants to invest into big ideas and innovative ideas in science has recognized some value in the kind of work that we do. So this also carries for us the responsibility of keeping up with the good work.
Okay, terrific. Maria, I really liked the point that you were making about just kind of going for it. My boss always says you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, which I think Wayne Gretzky actually originally said, but so we should give credit where credit is due. But I like that point, right? Like just kind of go for it and see what happens. So great points. And Huda, I mean, you have been awarded so many distinguished honors, and most recently the Kavli Prize. Can you speak a little bit to the Kavli specifically, but also, please share, how the other awards that you have won as well have been significant to you?
Thank you. I'm happy to do that. So the Kavli, given by the Kavli Foundation and the Norwegian Academy of Sciences, was really one of the most special surprises I experienced. And I think the video captures that. First of all, did not know was nominated, had no idea, but it was particularly sweet because it recognizes Harry Orr and I together. And for those of you who don't know, Harry and I have been collaborating since 1988. When I started as a postdoc in 1985 and started working towards cloning the gene for the ataxia, I heard of this wonderful associate professor, well-seasoned molecular biologist at the University of Minnesota, who's also working on the same disease. And I thought, we can continue. Back then, people were competing to clone disease genes. And I thought, well, maybe if we work together, we can get this there faster, and we will not waste resources. And, reached out to Harry, and we've been working together since then. We've been collaborating, and we discovered the gene on the same day in our respective lab. We had a strategy how to find the gene, and in 1993, we discovered it together. And since then, we've been working together, solving this mystery one piece by one piece, and they're now paths. Some of our work is leading to preparation for clinical trials for this disease as well. But there's, as I mentioned, there's so much more to learn basic biology. So we're trying to understand regional vulnerability. So for me, Harry is very special. The work of our 2 teams is very special. If you take the collective work of his lab and my lab, I felt this is really a beautiful recognition of the people in our lab and the teamwork and the value of teamwork. So that's why it was extra meaningful to me.
Okay, terrific. And I mean, Huda, what role do you think that, winning awards in general play in advancing scientists' career, and I would say specifically women in science?
I think that's really a great question. And maybe here I want to backtrack a little bit and really hit at the heart of the theme of why are you having this interview. And the idea is, if you have this interview, you can inspire people, young women, to really think, oh, well, you know, maybe one day I can be in their shoes. And I want to now cut through the chase and give you the punchline. And the punchline is, to every woman listening to this interview, if I could do it, everybody in the world can do it. Every woman in the world can do it. Because I'm going to share with you a little bit of context. So like Maria, I am an immigrant who grew up in Beirut, Lebanon. And like Maria, my dad made olive oil. So I come from a family, Lebanon on the Mediterranean, like Italy. You know, olive oil is our thing. We use it every day in our food, and that's what my dad made for a living. Neither of my parents went to college, and I was fortunate to go to the American University of Beirut, you know, a university of over 160 years old, about 160 years old now. And from there, I thought, this is where my life is going to be. I'm going to do medicine and be a doctor. But circumstances brought me here, and the war circumstances, and I ended up here. And I, as I said, did pediatrics and decided to go into research. So think about it. I come from a small country. I did not go to top Ivy League schools. I actually went to smaller, you know, Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee to finish my medical education, and then came to Baylor College of Medicine for studies. And I never thought I'm as good as anybody else. Entering science as a physician, I thought I was the least competent and least qualified person to ever, you know, do anything meaningful. When you talk about the imposter syndrome, I really believed anytime I did something or made a little discovery, it was purely luck. Everything was aligned, you know, for that to happen. So truthfully, never in my wildest dreams, I would have ever thought I would ever win any awards. My focus was on really solving the problems that clinically intrigued me. And I thought only through science, I will understand them better, understand what goes wrong with the brain. And I feel like Maria had incredible mentors. So my mentors really believed in me more than I believed in myself. When you go through failure after failure, but you're trying hard, they kept telling me you're going to get there. I didn't think so, but I thought I will give it my best and I will try. And I think it's really the combination of doing the best you can do every day, of having great mentor, of having a passion of something you want to follow, that finally got me across the finish lines for some of the discoveries that really led to the prizes you're bringing up. And this is where I feel, to take somebody with zero science experience, somebody who comes from a small country, somebody who didn't go to, you know, the top 10 universities in the country, and to be able to do, and somebody who didn't have any confidence in themselves, to be able to get that. I feel, this is now why I say it's genuine, that if I could do it, any young woman can do it. I think that when I started in science, and especially as a biomedical scientist, there were very few women in my shoes, and less so who chose to also have a family and raise children and so on and so forth. So honestly, all my role models were men, because that's who was around me. I was fortunate to have good male mentors who were supportive, although they didn't understand some of the struggles I was going through as a young mother and trying to learn basic biology and so on and so forth. But I think with time, you start, Maria, with very tiny awards. I started with very tiny awards, like the Texas Neurological Society. And then you move a little bit national to the Child Neurological Societies. And that is how the confidence is built piece by piece, to say, well, maybe I did something right. Maybe I should keep on trying even to be better. And I really think for me, it was never about the award. It was always my eye was focused, finding the cause of Rett syndrome, finding the cause of the ataxia, understanding these. I think in some ways, focusing on that, the awards came as total surprises, and they continue to be surprises. And I use them now to really do what's most dear to my heart, to honor my mentors, to support the next generation of scientists, whether at my alma mater or other places, to empower young women scientists who want to take risk in their research. So they have enabled me to do so much more, not only to honor my team, but I cannot go honoring my team, the 105 graduate with these prizes. The best way to honor them is to really put this towards the next generation. So you're honoring your own mentors this way, and you're honoring the young people in your lab who've done the work.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Huda. That was amazing. I really liked what you said about kind of, and I guess it makes sense, but I didn't think about it before you said it, about just starting with smaller prizes, or I guess it could also be other metrics too, like promotions or different, right, even being a speaker and things like that, and kind of building up to,
I think it helps build the confidence. I'm now convinced, Maria, you're not alone having what we call the imposter syndrome today. I only learned that word altogether, or that nomenclature, about 6 years ago. I didn't even know it. You just feel it, you live it, but you don't know that's what it is. What it is really, we try hard and we do our best and we do well, but we don't have the confidence that we're doing that. We think everybody else is better than us. And I think that it's that lack of confidence that recognizing women helps them tremendously, acknowledging what they've contributed, acknowledging the hard work they put. And that's why I'm saying those little prizes were for me so meaningful, because I thought I was going to be a failure coming to research without a PhD, coming to research with lack of knowledge of molecular biology and having to learn it step by step. So for me, and it's true for people in our lab, it's true for young graduates, really, us being mindful to recognize people for their effort and to encourage women by highlighting what they discover, because innately they're always going to feel a little bit less secure about their accomplishment than their peers. That's my experience. As I said, with hundreds of trainees or so, half of them women, I've always had to recognize that and remind the women how much better they are than many people around them. I had to always do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I also want to take the expression that you use, let's cut to the chase. And I'll open this up to anyone, because we also wouldn't be having this conversation today if women won awards and prizes and other, accolades, if it was 50-50, if it was as much as men, we wouldn't need to have this conversation. And Maria, actually, I was looking around the Rita Allen Scholar webpage, and it's a slightly unfair criticism, because it seems like in years past, it's pretty balanced, actually. But I did notice that you are there's 5 scholars this year, and there's 1 woman, and it's yourself. And so when I see that, I always think, why can't it be 50-50? I mean, like, and again, I don't mean to pick on them, because it is more balanced in years past, but this happens all the time. Conferences, we know about Manels, we know about, just having more men present and more men being given opportunities. So I guess my question to all of you, and I'll open it up to anybody, is, why do you think that is? And how can we go about making change there?
I would like to build on what Huda said and the imposter syndrome. I've asked myself many times, why? Why do I think all the time that I'm less worth than others? And probably part of the answer is from my upbringing. Again, I come from a family where nobody in my immediate family went to college. But I think part of it is the fact that I did not have role models that whereas when I grew up as I'm still growing up as a scientist, there's still not as many women as men, especially in higher positions in academia and in science. So in a way, the awards are really important to bring up and to celebrate when the awards go to women, to celebrate the work of women and to propose new role models and more role models to younger scientists, so that other younger scientists can recognize themselves in the stories of women or people from underrepresented groups, and then get inspired of working, keeping focused on their own goals and their own scientific aspirations. And I'm hoping that one day, hopefully soon, we will not need to have these panels, that we will not need to discuss the fact that there are not enough women getting recognized for their work. And I hope we will not need to discuss that there are not enough people from underrepresented groups that are getting recognized for their award. And I also hope that the discussions that we're having right now will also help people from other groups that are underrepresented in science to find their voice, to get and to get more recognition, all the recognition that they deserve.
Maybe I can add to this. I mean, there are many layers, Julianna, that contribute to fewer women getting prizes. For one, I can tell you, because I'm trying to nominate people as award, I seek out the deserving women to do that. But I never get a woman emailing me and asking me to nominate her for an award. I've never asked anybody to do that, that's for sure. And I have to admit, I get a lot of requests from male colleagues to do that. So that is, it starts with that. And it really builds on this sensation that, are we good enough? Are we competitive enough? Or there's also some humility. I'm not so sure what it is, but I think it is really that you have to be nominated, right? To win a prize. The second thing, let's face it, there's so many more. For the decades, there have been more men making the discoveries, being in leadership position, being, the prime, senior, if you will, professors at universities in research than women. The movement to have women rise beyond the assistant professor and beyond the associate is only now we're beginning to see the fruit of that. They will enter school the same numbers, but the dropout rate for women and underrepresented minorities is staggering, after, at the point of tenure or shortly after. Now, that is where a second problem lies. I see it all the time. A woman is highly capable, is doing great, and someone, typically a male colleague or a male chair or a male boss, might make a point, a negative comment, but, oh, you're going to have children. My goodness, that's going to be really tough raising a family and running a lab. That's immediately is going to inspire this woman to leave a career in science. Or some negative criticism unintentionally. I'm not saying male colleagues really say this. They would say it to a male colleague. But I think when you're already having a lot on your plate, and when you're already trying your best, and when you have a tendency innately to not overvalue your contribution or value them at what they are, but undervalue them, any negative comment will really shake your confidence even more and take you away from the game. So I feel that as I watch, and I know it when I was growing up, and I watch it as my other women following in my track growing up, and I see it even today, that you have to really be careful that your words to women, if you're mentoring women, you have to be careful that your words are not really subliminally giving them a negative message, because while men only pay attention to what they think maybe, and they don't take these comments at value, women are worried about them, they internalize them, it shakes their confidence. I don't know if Leslie and Maria agree with this point, but I see it all the time.
Actually, I can add one thing to that. When I was a technician, so before I did my PhD postdoc, so this is in the late 90s. So, a while ago, I mean, I'm hoping maybe it's different. I was told flat out that if I wanted a career, I should have one child only. That was it. And to your point, Huda, I still remember that comment being made to me, right? It gets in there, it sits, it's like cement, and that's not the only, right? That's just the one that I'm sharing. So I think your point is, it's extremely important, I think, what you're saying. And I have my own, I'm sure that Maria and Leslie, you have your own experiences, but my experience was so perfectly fit with exactly what you said. By the way, I have 3 children. So, I didn't listen, but anyway, Leslie and Maria, sorry, did you want to add something?
Well, I guess I'll add that all of this rings very true, and not to change the topic too much, but just on the point of imposter syndrome, something I also have had my share of in moving into this role of leading a business unit inside this larger company, but certainly being challenged with having to deal with decisions and activities that I've not dealt with in the past, and sort of based on first principles, making what I can only consider to be the best decision to move forward on a whole host of fronts. The thing that I've come to realize is that no one really knows. No one knows the future. No one knows the answer. All you can do in a leadership role is make the best decision in the collaboration of the people that are going to help you make that decision, and move forward as best you can. And this idea that there's someone else out there that knows something that you don't, that's just not true. And so I have, had a small amount of success in moving beyond the imposter syndrome concept by having that realization that there isn't some truth out there in the universe that everyone else has that I don't. And so for that reason, there's some capability to believe in myself. And so I'll just put that message out there. I will also say, to the broader points shared today, the idea of how critical mentors are in anyone's career moving forward, but certainly women's careers in science. I have had the most amazing mentor. I might get a little misty with Jeff Buca, who not only celebrates and certainly put me up for this award that has put me in the position to be part of this panel today, but having people like that in your corner that will pick up the phone for you when you would not pick it up for yourself, to Huda's point, that I would never in a million years suggest to someone that I should be nominated for an award. Having those people in your corner is the thing that changes the game. And having Jeff in my corner, and certainly Joel Bader as well, is sort of the turning point that puts me on a path. And I think, to the extent that other women get to move forward in their career, like that is the game changer, in my opinion.
I want to follow up on Leslie's point. I, as well, all my mentors were men. And men can be amazing mentors. As I said, when I didn't believe in myself, they believed in me. And I think that that's an important message, because I think really both men and women hold the power to empower all people to be successful. And the fact many of us on this call are successful thanks to incredible male mentors speak to the value and incredible male mentors that are around. And I think that everybody should really partake in this. I think that what's special perhaps about our mentors is they recognized what's good in us and reminded us of that. And at the same time, they never put us down. And I think that that's because those are the two, if you will, factors that typically play in shaking a woman's confidence and make her wonder, well, I can't really stay in science. I'm not good enough. And that's why we lost generations of women over the many decades before. And we're facing this problem now.
One more point to make on this idea of mentor support, and in my own experience, the idea that I was not, super motivated to take an academic career path. but rather always had my eye on moving from academia into industry. And that same level of support from my mentors in moving in what, many academics would consider to be a non-traditional path, although it's becoming increasingly traditional and certainly the only path for many people, given how hard academic jobs are to land. That sort of unfettered support across any future direction of interest is such a meaningful thing in the context of mentors.
Okay, terrific. So in our last couple of minutes, and I just want to add, hopefully things are moving in the right direction with more prizes for women, small or big. For example, the Green Guard Prize, which is a terrific, amazing prize, given only to women. And also to very public-facing awards like the Nobel going to, more women. And of course, historically to Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuelle Charpentier being the only two women to win the chemistry prize for the first time. And both of them, I have had the pleasure of interviewing Jennifer, who talks about that the young, it doesn't actually matter, age doesn't matter, all women coming to her and saying how amazing, those really public facing prizes have been for women in science. So hopefully we can end on an optimistic note here. But I want to ask each of you in our last minute to share to the women that are in the audience listening, is there any nugget of advice or something that you'd like to share, just kind of to leave our audience with? Leslie, why don't we start with you?
I think I might have already given my big piece of advice. Just the idea that nobody really knows what the future holds.
Okay.
Nobody knows what's going to happen. And so there's no reason to believe you can't be the person that defines that path.
Okay, terrific. And Maria, how about yourself?
I'm almost, tearing up thinking about this. It takes a village. We hear this expression all the time. And it's not just about mentors and people, in the work context that support you and encourage you. It's also about family. And so I want to just share the fact that I will not be where I am without my partner and husband, who's always believed in me and encouraged me. And especially right now with having a young kid and all the challenges that also Huda alluded to, having also a happy and family life, it's and supportive partner. It's a big part of this picture.
And Huda.
So I'm going to be a little bit practical on this last piece of advice, because I see that all the time. I'd like to build on Leslie's comment. You can't really predict the future, and that's very true. But we have to plan to do something over a period of time. First advice, I always say, take life 5 years at a time, because within 5 years, you can plan enough to have goals that you want to accomplish, but you're really being realistic, because who knows what happened in the future, right? Technology changes, science changes. That's very practical. But the most practical advice I want to give perhaps to women is that we try to take on everything, and we try to really want to be sure we do everything we do as best as we can, but we cannot do everything. So I always tell women, if you're in science, you love this career, you have a family and you have friends, focus on those important things in your life and do them with passion. But anything you can delegate, please delegate to someone else. Do not try to do everything else in your life. This is where it becomes practical. You cannot be the person cleaning your house if you're a scientist and a mother and a wife. Sometimes you're helping economy. Have people, treat them well, hire people to help you. I think people underestimate that, because they say, oh, I can do it. I'll do that on the weekend. But that really erodes from your time with family, from your time with friends, from your time building other important relationships that Maria was talking about. So my practical advice is that a career in science and having another aspect of your life is very feasible, but you have to also realize things you don't need to do. Make sure you don't waste your time on them.
Okay, terrific. Great advice. What a terrific discussion. That unfortunately brings us to the end of our conversation and concludes this session. I want to again thank Huda and Maria and Leslie for such a terrific discussion and all the great advice. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. For everyone at the Rosalind Franklin Society and Jen, I'm Julianna LeMieux, and please stay tuned for our next session.